we really need to focus as a community on community.
Hello and welcome back to the Hudson Valley One podcast. I'm your host, Zach Shaw, here with publisher and star at the top of our news tree, Getty Sveikauskas.
How do you do, folks? Thank you for the nice introduction, Zach. What now?
You could either do a Santa Claus impersonation or you could do a publisher reality.
Well, let me see. Okay, let's talk about IBM.
Oh, now that's a big gift under our tree, or is it?
Well, I don't know. It's everybody gets a kind of a misshapen, overlarge sweater for Christmas, and this may be ours.
So if you didn't hear, TechCity is being sold, well, a huge chunk of it, the majority stake in it, right?
Right, exactly. And it's kind of like you have to admire the artistry with which the deal was put together. It's very complex, involving decades of conflicted parties, and the developer is absolutely competent, but it's still a white elephant.
Well, it's a huge place. I don't think people appreciate just how massive that place is. I've been inside, actually, and it's like football fields upon football fields of office space, kitchenettes, and
right, exactly.
All full of asbestos too, right?
Yeah, and how? Yeah, well, that was an important part of it. That ever since IBM left, that's been kind of like a dark cloud, and this pile of stuff that's toxic outside is kind of not a very good advertisement for the place, and that's going to all be removed. At least the developers is committed to spending, I think, what is it, $6 or $8 million to remediation, which certainly should take care of it. And when you get into cleanup of toxic waste, as you know, it's a bottomless pit.
Right. Well, that place has been being cleaned up now for quite a while, right? IBM poured millions of dollars into a new groundwater system.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing, the 50s, making microchips, making electronics. Like, I can't think of anything more polluting than 50s era computer process,
Yeah.
Well, no, they weren't around in the 50s, though. I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
they came in the 70s?
Right. And I don't know, they were more development than manufacturing, but they were manufacturing too, sure. So I assume they did something that didn't sit right with the environment. Put it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, now the developer is. They started out, I believe, buying parking spaces, parking garages in New York City, in Manhattan.
Good move.
And that's there's nothing like good cash flow from that. You know the business very well. That's it. And then they started doing more ambitious development projects of all kinds. And one of the things that they're invested in that I was interested in is this partially under the water, the electric line from Canada, where they were apparently one of the original investors. And that, it's a huge amount of money, very complex. And so they're willing to take on stuff like that. Now, mostly up to now, I believe that they have limited their activities mainly to the New York City metropolitan area and things connected to it. And this may be their furthest venture out. And there are differences between the East Fishkill IBM site, which has some big tenants, some good prospects, and the developers have been bringing them in, and some small businesses. But Town of Ulster, Lake Katrine, it's surrounded by development, by strip development.
Right.
And that I don't know whether that's going to be part of what they might fall back on, but I don't look forward to that particularly, nor do I look forward to the warehousing is the main uh, uh, activity there, which it might well turn out to be.
Yeah, let's dig into that because I found it fascinating when the developer suggested what they were going to use this area for, and warehousing was on the bottom of the list under arts and culture and farm hub and these types of things, which have been discussed by the Novo Foundation in TechCity, and they're kind of things that are already underway here. So, is this like a plug and play for that, or do you think that that's just sort of a PR gloss? When really there's going to be warehousing and light industry and
Well,
stuff
at that point, that information was part of the initial outlines of a deal, which was on September the 12th.
Okay.
And that list that they gave as possible activities is I believe, identical to the one that the county was working on by itself.
Okay.
So they said, yeah, we'll pretend, or we'll assume that those uses make sense, but I doubt very much that there's a commitment to them. That where the commitment is that that they're willing to put in money, to put in capital, for the use and the human infrastructure around that use.
Mm-hmm.
They're players. And I think that's a positive. But you take an obsolete building. What can you use it for? You can fill it with small businesses, perhaps, as part of what they did in East Fishkill, and that have nothing to do with industrial work, actually. Or you could get something which attracts, say, is a magnet for sophisticated businesses, say, digital businesses, for instance. Now, you can't imagine anything but a fly-by-night digital business such as yours occupying space.
And this is why it perplexes me.
Yeah,
There'd be no way that I would ever pay rent when I can work from home. And I think, COVID has turned us into a work from home kind of culture, us digital people. So I just don't understand why the next generation of businesses would need that much floor space.
Well, if you look at the future of New York City, there's, New York City has managed somehow to bounce back from practically anything that's been thrown at it for a couple of hundred years. And the question is, what's the solution now to the COVID caused lack of necessity to bring business into offices like remote work, etc. That they transform some things maybe to apartments and stuff like that. But still, people come to New York City not for the office space, but for the remarkable mix of people that are there and activities available for them. And I think in order for a burb like us, an exurb, to be successful, we need to have that same kind of hub of human resources. So, tens of thousands of brilliant people like you and me coming to New York City would be, here would be terrific.
Mm-hmm.
That is, if there's an air of excitement, people doing things wherever they're doing them, and a sort of a flavor of an up and coming, future oriented location. If we can do that, then I think we have more hope. And I would put more emphasis on the human infrastructure than on the office space.
That makes a lot of sense. And no one could argue that Kingston isn't that kind of place right now. It's the hottest real estate. Everyone wants to be here because there's that energy of, something's happening.
Those
here.
kind of balloons sometimes blow up.
Well,
that we are, oh boy, Hudson, nothing like it. Peekskill, yes, really. Beacon, Kingston, yeah. I think that a few of the river cities may well make it and become those hubs which attract more people. But I'm afraid others, like you think of poor Poughkeepsie, uh, shouldn't say that, Mayor, um, Newburgh, it's they're going to have a harder time. So I think we really need to focus as a community on community.
I like that. I like that. And I mean, it's tough, right? Because we're bringing lots of jobs into the area. We hope. We don't know where those people will live. You know, more than half of these jobs are going to be minimum wage. And like you said, we don't know the businesses that are going to move in here. We know that TechCity has a history of a lot of promises that have gone, kind of ignored. I mean, lots of businesses. A farm bridge, for instance, was one of those that was supposed to save TechCity, and that fell apart.
Well,
that's just one of many.
I don't know about you, but that sentence about half the jobs at minimum wage hit a dull thud with me.
Yeah.
I think that's out of touch, first of all, with the labor market right now, but it's also not a very ambitious future. I mean, it says you want a community where half the people work at minimum wage? That's terrible.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
And then, this has shades and echoes to me of the Hudson Valley Mall, obviously commercial, slightly different here. But have you been to the Hudson Valley Mall lately?
Yeah, I went for my booster shot.
Oh, okay, excellent. So they still sell something there. So you see, it's just like empty. It's been papered over. It hasn't grown. There's really nothing going on there. It's only, gotten worse. And we were promised a whole slew of good things were going to happen there. And you just can't fight macro trends in the economy. Like, no one's going to malls anymore, and that's not going to come back.
Well, they're not going to B and C malls, the malls of a certain kind. But I noticed that some of the little strip malls have been doing very well.
Sure. Well, a lot of the stores that retail discount products that have been, like wholesale acquired, and certain segments do dollar stores, which are now Dollar Tree is $1.25 now. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, okay.
So inflation.
Didn't know that. Gotta check my quarter supply. Can't use them all for the parking meter anymore.
But we're talking about a deal that isn't even done. It's likely to be done, but it's just going to take a long time before we see business one coming into this place, right?
Yeah, I think so. And to me, the best I can say is there are some smart people involved, that they were willing to take this on. I'm not disappointed that they got it virtually for nothing. The question is, what have they promised to do on their part? Then they would seem to have the money to spend to create some kind of center of excellence that will attract the appropriate types of industry. I noticed that, for instance, that they wanted a community college satellite in the place. That's promising.
Yes.
Because the connection to education and better employment is a clear one. But then, so you see both sides. You see, well, it could be this. They'll make the IBM into Mall City, the greatest mall of all, replacing Palisades and Co-hosts.
I'd like to see a Ferris wheel going up by that water tower.
Well, that's a Ferris wheel, but I don't think too many strip malls have Ferris wheels.
Well,
that's right. But having, like they had at the mouth of the Hudson, when they at the times of the steamboat, where you build an amusement park with everything around it to attract other kinds of things. Well, what's the equivalent? I don't think will be the amusement park, but it might be a specialized college of some kind. It might be a company that sort of sets the trend and brings other companies like it to the area. It could be the smarts of the developer. It's all those three things combined,
right,
that would make it work.
Well, the smarts of the developer is the one I question. And, tell me if I'm wrong here, because I do see the optimistic side of this, that this is a good investment in a place that is essentially a toxic junkyard. But, we've seen developers before I always bring this up, the former BSP building across the street, which was purchased by a major developer. And it's vacant and dormant and has been for at least a year or two. We were promised that this would become what BSP used to be, a sort of hub of, in fact, BSP was that place, by the way. It was the place that got all the young people excited to move here and to, the younger demographic at least. So that's gone. We don't have that. We're not getting what the developer promised. The Kingstonian is being, that project, that developer sued the Kingstonian once again recently. To try and block the Kingstonian being developed, which is another development that is promising lots of things. How do we hold the developers accountable to their promises, or is there really no way when they're throwing around tens of millions of dollars?
Well, I think you go by the track record of the developer, given not knowing anything else. And the track record of, for instance, the BSP guy is he holds on to properties until they start working, and he's willing to hold on a long time, avoid whatever taxes he can, to make kind of false starts at filling them with businesses, but they remain empty. That's one type. The second type, the Kingstonian, those people actually do have money. They propose something that's kind of, I would call it a mixed picture. I don't like it, but I'm not a die for it enemy of that project. I think what I'd like to do, if they're going to do it, let them do it well.
Should they be given Fair Street extension, or should they have to pay for that?
That I think that's no longer a question, fortunately or unfortunately. I think that the key to the quality of the Kingstonian, other than what's proposed, is what happens on Fair Street when Fair Street is gone. That is, is it just kind of a bleak area like the meatpacking area used to be in Greenwich Village?
Yeah.
Or is it something that has character, draws people, serves as a connector to Kingston Plaza and Uptown, something that can benefit everybody, but requires an investment in quality and forethought on the part of the developer. I'm hopeful that now the third type, this National Resources, the people who did the IBM, they have a much better track record.
Okay.
They have access to a lot of money. They seem to be they seem to realize that when you have a distressed property, you have to invest in it and be willing to work with people very patiently for quite a while in order to make it work. And they have the connections to be able to at least make the pitch to various people. It's hard to get businesses to move. For instance, I believe that they recently did something with one of the Westchester companies, a huge multinational, that they agreed to do a plant in East Fishkill. So that's a plus. You have to have a few anchors, and the question is, what could the anchors be here? And I think so. I think we're really at the beginning of the search. Having a developer you can have confidence in is a real plus. Secondly, that confidences can always be betrayed if they're not written down. And secondly, you want them to have that continuing interest. You don't want them to turn around and sell it to someone else and be back in the same kind of sorry state that you were before.
Right. Well, we've been burned by Ginsburg, so we
Yeah, nothing will be worse than Ginsburg. That's that's a sad kind of determination, but but a true one. He seemed to be just kind of a fly in every ointment that he touched.
You know, you live long enough in Kingston or in this area, and you start to have this special relationship with places like TechCity or things like the Pike Plan, these sagas of just like disaster going on. And that was kind of what I was thinking a lot about this week is, you know, we need government and we need large amounts of money to make big things happen. And yet that also sets us up for very large failures that can be pockmarks on an area for decades.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But that happens either in the private market or in the public. Everybody makes mistakes.
Yes.
So to me, what I'm looking for there is opportunities to participate in government, because government, if it's left on its own, will do mischief.
And it's left on its own right now, I think.
Well, yeah. So what would you do? For instance, there's every year they have the county budget, right? And that's cooked up by Pat Ryan and his team in the county office building, and they do rollouts and try to get what they want through the legislature, which usually isn't too hard. And it's not really participation. Now, I talked to the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, the people who are supposed to look at the budget people. I said, well, and he was not combative at all, but he said, you know, that Pat's team was supposed to work with the Ways and Means Committee, give them a heads up as to what was coming, so we could talk it over and discuss the matter and have the public involved. And that didn't happen because the squeeze was on. By the time they got the budget together, there was no time for that. Well, that's terrible. You know, that precludes the kind of participation. What we have in terms of participation is there's a hearing at the end of the process where it's a done deal, but you can come and unwind if you want.
Right.
That's not good enough.
It's definitely not good enough. And I'm starting to gain an appreciation when having these conversations with you why politicians are so apt to, you know, do things like declare a state of an emergency when there's really no cause for it. It's because it's impossible to line people up in support of something. But on the flip side, there's so little participation in government that those in power can basically get away with whatever they need to get away with. And so the solution doesn't seem to be, as I thought in my naive mind, just more transparency, writing better articles to let people know of what's going on. That's just not enough. There needs to be a further push. And I don't know whether that's changing the laws, like, how can we get people to, you know, the thousands of people in Kingston who are afraid that they're going to lose their rentals in January. How do we get them to all show up at the Common Council vote in January and say, you know, because to me, it's clear that there's popular demand for things and they're just not getting done because there aren't large amounts of money or power behind them.
Well, when people show up and they complain and yell, and then they're kind of listened to very politely, but it's a done deal. That's not the way to do it. You have to. Politicians don't seem to understand that it's suicidal for them not to have that participation, because the alternative is a bunch of know-nothings who just buttress your idea that people shouldn't be trusted.
Yeah, like I was really surprised when I started watching these Common Council and other various government meetings. There's no creativity. There's not a whole lot of debate even. It's just procedural, a lot of rubber stamping, a lot of passing things through. And then when you finally have the public come in and give speeches, that's when you actually hear the issues being addressed. They aren't being addressed by the politicians, it seems.
Well, you're right. That's what you see, and that's what you get. So I think that unless the officials show a sense of not only say a sense of participation is important, but act on it and make things available before decisions are made, before they kind of have talked it through and decided you and that's part of helping them make the decision for greater participation is information from the outside, and that's where the media come in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we can't force them to open up, but we can put out the information where other people want them to push for opening it up. Because you have community, you can't build community just by occasional nods and curtsies to what needs to be done. You need to do it. It's that, you know, as Joe Hill said in 1916, don't mourn, organize.
Yeah.
And they hanged him.
But is organizing really enough in this day and age? Like, take, for example, Rise Up Kingston,
Yep.
well funded by the Novo Foundation, who funds, many people in this area, and not very transparently. And they have been really focused on the defunding the police, and they've spent a large amount of money creating door hangings, which many Kingston residents have found on their doors. They've got teams hanging them. They're doing protests. They're at the common council meetings. Not a single thing has happened regarding defunding the police. And that may just be because defund the police, as we've talked about before, is not the catchiest slogan. But it doesn't even seem to me that money and organization solve the issue.
Well, maybe we could discuss that with Scott Childress, when he comes in.
Yeah, next week, right?
Next week.
Our first guest.
But the Common Council has this Guardian program where a local, not in the government's pocket, not for profit, talks about police education reform, sort of contact between the police and the community. And they're put money behind that. And that's a small thing, but that's what needs to be done. I wish that the police could hear more about what these people are saying, and I wish these people could hear more about what the police are saying. As a white man in a Volvo, I'm treated reasonably well by the police, and they're, but I don't know if that same quality of respect goes to other members of the community who might be suspected of having drugs in their pocket.
Yeah. No, I mean...
illegal drugs. I have legal drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. As long as I stay out of the South with the long hair, because, that I've been treated poorly by police in the South with long hair. But that's a point of privilege. And, it's clearly something needs to change here. There's been just absolute debacles happening. But again, even when people are organized, even when people are well funded, it seems like a completely uphill battle. And the only way to curry favor within the halls of power is to either have power or great sums of money.
Well, one reward of organization is the activity itself. That
Sure.
is, you meet people who have the same complaints you have. You try to arrange them in such a way that the politicians understand them and recognize that there are people pushing for that. And you push. I noticed that when Pat Ryan endorsed Phil Erner, the Democratic Socialist of America candidate, he said, Phil is a hard worker. He seems to know everybody, and he's a people person. And it's ideas such as people like him are worth listening to. That's all he said. But that kind of summed it up in a nutshell.
Right.
The first thing is that realization that people who are not like you and are disadvantaged are as worthy of respect as the others, and that's to some degree is happening.
Like, why can't we get a Rise Up member on a review board for the police? Along with some police members.
I think we had now, I think 2 or 3 members on the police commission. I think the Deschenette Lydia. No, it's not. I've got. She wanted to be on. She was on, and she resigned after a year without much explanation.
Okay.
And there are other. You need not. One mistake is that people who kind of think that the power is uh, is in the government, and once you get into the government, you have power, are wrong. Once you get into government, you're still a rookie who's learning the ropes, and that acculturation kind of maybe not just gives you greater knowledge, but kind of makes you more accommodating to the status quo.
Right.
And that again, if the community organizing is effective, that's less likely to happen. I know in my lifetime in the in England, in the British, when the British Labour government came in, there was this guy, Nye Bevan, who was very radical, and he was the candidate. The coal miners loved him. Now there are no coal miners anymore. That's gone. But anyway, Nye was someone who held to the faith and made kept others people feet in the fire as much as possible, and it was really a great politician. He was more like Bernie Sanders and ended up not gaining complete power, which was Bernie's fate as well.
Right.
But being willing to both hold to your principles and make deals when it's essential.
So we need better leaders, it sounds like.
Well, we either that or we need the leaders to be better,
To listen better. Yeah, I mean,
to listen better. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that is completely unrelated, I was trying to come up with a good segue, but the bike lanes, Broadway, this is another thing that a lot of people are talking about in Kingston. The bike lanes have been closed now for I don't know how many weeks. Nobody knows why. Maybe we should look into that. So there's bikers in the road while cars are opening their door. I mean, it's just a mess. There's tons of blind corners now on Broadway that makes it really hard to turn and probably makes a dangerous situation for bicyclists. And in general, the bike lanes, I'm going to bring this around to what we were talking about. The bike lanes have been that thing that everyone talks about, like, what is going on? Like, people have died because of these bike lanes being poorly constructed, allegedly. And so this isn't even something that it seems like most people wanted, but it was put there anyway. And now it seems to be, to my eyes at least, causing major problems with the flow of traffic on Broadway. So what happened there? I mean, why did that thing even get approved? It gets back to what we're talking about? Like,
well, I think it's a good situation as an illustration that my son, who's 30 years old, loves Broadway and the bike lanes because they have it in New York.
Yeah.
And they're successful. They make it that way.
Yeah.
And they make them that way. In dear old Kingston, 3 people got killed in the bike lanes on bikes in the past year, which is a staggering statistic for a city this size. And it seems to be quite reasonable that the mayor said, we don't need the bike. We can't really use the bike lanes freely until we educate people about them, because people don't respect the bike lanes. They do on Broadway because they're separated. They did this thing that they do in New York City, where you have the bike lanes close to the sidewalk, and then you have parked cars, so protecting the bike lanes in a sense.
This is the dumbest idea I've heard in a long time. So you're not going to open the bike lanes because people have to be taught how to ride a bike in a bike lane?
People have to be taught not to kill people who are in the bike lane.
Oh, so it's more for the yeah.
Absolutely, no.
More for the drivers.
You're not educating the bike riders. You're educating the public.
So we're leaving it up to people reading a leaflet they're mailed in the mail. That just sounds like the city is covering their legal liability, but they can say, "Hey, we told everyone." So when the next person dies, they can say, "Well, we tried to let them know." It's like, no, the design of the bike lanes is bad. The one where the first person died, I have to commute through there
Yeah.
almost every day. And almost every day I said, someone is going to die here, because it doesn't take a genius to look at the teeny little stop sign and the big stop sign and the multitude of lines and everything
Yeah.
and realize that someone's going to die there. And it happened. Last night or yesterday, there was a serious accident on Smith Avenue at the CSX railroad crossing.
Right.
And this hit me close to home. 2 people were seriously injured,
Yeah.
because I was almost seriously injured at that intersection, because there's a problem with that intersection where the crossing, barriers come down very late. And I found myself in a position where I was on the tracks. There was a car in front of me turning left, right, which is a common occurrence. And the train's coming at me and the barriers aren't coming down. So I had to accelerate quickly out to get out, and another car accelerated quickly. It was behind me. It's just a broken intersection. So many residents know that these things are a problem. And it just seems like, why can't we get together and get the government to fix these things in the planning phase that anyone knows logically just doesn't make sense. It's like the engineers and the traffic engineers are being trusted 100% to do their job with no community input. Maybe that's a little critical, but my role is to be critical. There's enough people regurgitating press releases and talking themselves up.
Well,
and I had
as you know, trains don't stop at stop signs.
Maybe they need a leaflet to tell them how to operate the train, or maybe we need to.
No, a train, it would take half a mile to stop a train, so
Right.
that doesn't help. And indeed, I think I would estimate that one person gets killed in Ulster County every 3 years or 5 years by a train, and it's a ridiculous waste of life. But how do we deal with that? And you're right that the first thing is to take all intersections and make sure that the situation isn't that way. But it doesn't seem to stop people. In Saugerties, a woman was killed at the well-known intersection there, despite the sign. Trying to make it before people are willing to risk their lives in order to get across a train crossing before the train comes and kills them.
Well, that's a bit Darwinian, but there's, the CSX has a long track record of safety issues, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Right. And so, again, this is a situation where large entities with lots of power and influence, with lots of money, aren't being held accountable for fixing what everyone in this area knows is broken. The developer across the street isn't being held accountable for sitting on one of the cultural landmarks of this area. The Kingstonian isn't being held accountable for, getting free reign over uptown Kingston. And, we'll see what happens with TechCity. But the mechanisms aren't there. They're just not there. And their organizing doesn't seem to be introducing them into, through the barrier of power and money.
Well,
we need a revolution.
If everybody said, the first priority is to double the property taxes on vacant properties. Simple thing, right? City can just do it. Focus on that. Just do that. And if you want, you have exemptions by special permit. So in order not to be under that law, somebody would have to come before a political group, and the political group would be trained to be unsympathetic to them.
I see. Will that happen?
It could happen in the city, yeah. I would. It's one of the things I wonder what's wrong with that idea.
Well, I mean, I love learning so much from you. And if you're out there and you're listening and you have any insight into anything we've talked about, please leave a comment. Let's get a discussion going. Because next week, we have our first guest, right?
Yes, we do.
And we're going to have guests for the foreseeable future because, we can only talk about so much. And you need to hear it from the horse's mouth from the people that I'm criticizing, right?
Right. Okay.
But I'll be standing behind the camera. I'll let you handle it because you've got the diplomacy skills.
Okay. Nice seeing you folks.
See you next time on the Hudson Valley One podcast.